the business outlined in the agenda. The purpose of this meeting is to conduct a confirmation hearing for the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner in accordance with Schedule 1 of the Police Reform and Social Responsibility Act 2011. And then I'm setting out the process. We will ask firstly questions of the Commissioner and then questions of the proposed Deputy Commissioner. Then we will move into a closed session where we will determine whether to endorse the candidate. And then we will at some point, Sarah, invite you to ask any questions if you'd like to do that. Okay. We'll move back to the agenda. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We have apologies for absence from Councillor Burt, Councillor Dilks, Councillor Skinner and David Wood.
Thank you very much. Must be the summer holidays. Okay, so are there any declarations of interest this morning, please? Don't see any. So we will now move to the questions. And the first question, Commissioner, are for you. And I will ask the first one. How do you believe the appointment of a Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner will support you in the role as Crime Commissioner?
Well, thank you for the question. It's becoming where initially it was a few people had a deputy. As the roles developed, it's become more and more the norm. And certainly, obviously, the previous government had, as part of the Police and Crime Commissioner Review Part 2, had it in mind to put in legislation to make it a mandatory requirement, but that legislation didn't make it through the final stages before the general election came. So they recognised very much that the need for somebody to deputise on a day-to-day basis was really important, but also should anything happen to the Police and Crime Commissioner while they're in office, you need somebody that's in a position to obviously take key decisions. And while you can have somebody from your team step into that role, it's certainly not optimal that it's not somebody that's across all the areas of business. So I think people have recognised more and more that a deputy is really important to representing the public in that role. Aside from that, we obviously represent a very large county, 2,500 square miles of Lincolnshire. It's a big old place, and that's before you start looking at the regional work that we do across the whole East Midlands and then some of the national work as well. And it's just simply not possible to be across all areas of work as a single person. If you can imagine running a district council or a county council being the only councillor that was trying to do that, it's an impossible task. So, for example, in Lincolnshire now we have 3 town deal boards for Spalding, Skegness and Boston. All of them have a statutory requirement for the Police and Crime Commissioner or representative to attend, not just those key meetings, but the workshops and everything else that come with them. That's a massive body of work that requires an in-person presence. And that's just one example of where the role was expanded in the last 12 months. So it is vital to have that support. The other thing it's really important to do is have a different skill set that adds value to your own. And I think everybody needs to recognise they do not know everything. And I certainly am very aware of areas that are not my expertise by my life experience. And it's important to get a deputy that can do that. And somebody that's going to actually challenge you to make better decisions. You don't want a yes person, you want somebody that's going to actually challenge and equally push for a different perspective to be examined as part of decision making. And that has all been in my mind when I've looked for a candidate this time around. So I think that covers that.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Okay, next question, Councillor Marsh, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioner.
Morning,
Sarah. Your previous deputy took certain responsibilities on your behalf. You propose to delegate to your new deputy?
Well, initially, very similar areas of business. So, for example, the criminal justice space was something the previous deputy worked closely along. So, for example, co-chairing the employment board in the prison, working on the reducing reoffending board with the prison, areas that are hugely important if we want to see people leaving prison and going into employment rather than back to crime. And also with the early release schemes that are only just being rolled out by government, we need to really be working closely with criminal justice partners to make sure that that works as well as it can. Out of court disposal, we've got legislation change coming there, which will mean that more scrutiny is needed around our use of out of court disposals. So that whole criminal justice space, including things like unpaid work programs with probation, other things, is an area. Sarah's background in particular lends itself well to leading on engaging with young people, and the Lincolnshire Strong Voices work that we have put together is super important, both in working with young people to make sure their voice is heard as part of policy development, but also in making sure that we are passing information to that next generation about how to keep safe, whether that's in the physical world, the online world, in lots of different spaces. So working with partners to make sure our young people are supported, don't become victims of crime, don't equally get drawn into things like county lines and other areas. So that will be really important. In addition to that, a lot of the partnership space, as I say, we will share work. So things like the town deal boards, it's just not really possible for one person to attend all of that. We will work together. And then we have things like the Health and Wellbeing Board and other partnership spaces where, again, we can share that responsibility. So if I happen to be in one part of the county or country, then I've got somebody else that can share that responsibility. When it comes to some of the national work, I've always been quite choosy to make sure any national work that I undertake adds value to Lincolnshire. Now, I've taken on the National Road Safety Roads Policing portfolio, and specifically I wanted that because of the number of deaths and serious injuries on Lincolnshire's roads. It's an area of real focus for me. So I want to be in a position of chairing our road safety partnership in Lincolnshire and really driving change across our partnership in that space. If I'm to do that, then I will equally find that meetings clash more often, and I will want to prioritise some of those to make sure I'm really making the difference to residents in our communities. And I will need Sarah to step up and be able to deputise in various different ways to enable me to do that.
Very much. Let us ask the supplementary. The Safer Lincolnshire Partnership, will Sarah have a role in that?
She will indeed. And again, it's one of those spaces where I see it being a sort of a joint approach, but she will probably lead on attendance, but with me in support. So it will be one of those, same as the Health and Wellbeing Board, where if she's unavailable because something else clashes, then obviously I can deputise for her in that space just as much as she can for me in other areas. But yeah, she will be working in that area.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next question, Councillor Trotter, please.
Chairman, welcome Sarah and good morning, Councillor. What assessment have you undertaken of the candidate's skills, knowledge and experience?
Well, we've had a significant number of discussions, talked about the various elements of Sarah's career that have brought her to where she is now with her career. And it's quite a difficult job role to assess in any traditional sense, because yes, it's about the skill set you have to have a knowledge and understanding in certain areas, but actually, as anybody who works in public service, particularly in an elected space, would know, it's not just about an academic side to that. It's about your attitude, it's about your aptitude, it's about your gravitas when you are chairing a meeting. It's a whole raft of different skills that come together to make you the right person for the job, and very distinctly from employing a staff member in the traditional sense to work in your office, having somebody to deputise for you is more than that. And so on a personal level, I've undertaken that sort of assessment to really understand, will I be comfortable with Sarah being in a room when I'm not there, acting as my representative with my voice carrying that responsibility on behalf of Lincolnshire. So I have confidence in that, or I'll be here today. But it's not something that you can formally interview for in any traditional sense to get that rounded view. It has to be more than that, and I feel confident that that has been done.
Very much. Next question, Councillor Beale, please. Thank you.
Welcome, Sarah. Welcome. How do you intend, Mark, to evaluate the effectiveness of the role undertaken by your deputy, please?
Well, I think there's a number of different ways that happens. Firstly, we will obviously sit down on a very regular basis to go through what's happening, and this used to happen with my previous deputy, where every few days we'd be sitting down to go, what's happened, what's coming up. So there's that regular contact that has to be, because they are speaking on behalf of me in those spaces. So it has to be a really close working relationship in that respect. And in addition to that, you then have more formal touch points. So, if you are responsible for a particular work stream, then often that work stream is specifically evaluated. So, for example, we have the Lincolnshire Strong Voices element evaluated. The Safe Together team was evaluated. So, as new things come up, projects or programmes that come under Sarah, then they themselves will be evaluated for their outcomes. So by the virtue that we're doing that, obviously that's evaluating the performance of the person leading that programme. In addition to that, we'll obviously at an annual level be sitting down to really understand how we're doing against the police and crime plan, but also what we want to do moving forward. So if there are any concerns that I would have about the way we're working together, they'll be addressed in short order. There won't be sort of a lengthy period of time. And certainly there will be still those formal points where we address any issues. But, it has to be a close professional working relationship that relies on regular contact to keep everything moving smoothly.
Yeah, thank you.
Where there are specific projects, what sort of timescale financial arrangements are being set, please?
Not sure I follow the question, Councillor.
Where you said that the deputy may be responsible for a particular area, presumably there will be targets, idea what's wanted to be achieved. That would involve obviously a timescale and presumably sort of budgetary constraints as necessary.
Well, it depends on what it is. So, for example, if the new government says, well, actually, we're going to provide a financial work stream around unpaid work programmes that we want PCCs to be a part of, which is entirely possible. And if that was an area that came under my deputy, the timescale would be largely, because it's a national programme dictated to by national. What we were evaluating in part would be dictated to by national, because usually grant agreements are very specific about what it is that you need to comply with. And we have regular meetings. So every other Monday morning, we bring all the senior leadership together where we discuss progress against the police and crime plan. We look at projects, how they're going, anything that we need to correct. So what we wouldn't have is a situation where I'm delegating budgets to the deputy. It doesn't work like that. Quite often, the finances are external funding that we've attracted. So a lot of the money that is spent within the OPCC isn't mainstream policing budget, it's additionality. And that would be subject to some fairly rigorous, robust sort of processes around it. So that wouldn't be any different whether one of us was leading on it or the other. It still has to comply with that.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask a supplementary? Do you intend to have a formal annual appraisal?
It isn't something I've done previously. It's something that I'll consider, but I'm not aware of any council leader doing a formal annual appraisal on their deputy, although I could be wrong.
Oh, we do have.
Oh, well, in which case,
Exec members, we do get called in.
I must have got lucky when I was an exec.
Very much so.
Councillor.
Yes.
But nevertheless, it's something I'll consider, but it isn't something that I've done previously.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Commissioner, for your responses. We'll now move on, Sarah, to, you can imagine we do have some questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So our first question is from Councillor Passel.
Thank you, Chairman. Morning, Sarah. Morning, Commissioner. What is your understanding of the role and the responsibilities you will have as Deputy Commissioner?
I think there are a few streams to negotiate here. So firstly, the direct deputising from up, to be able to
have a great understanding of his mission and his values and the work that he does, and to implement that into my responses and my workload, that direct deputy work. To also lead my own work streams. Mark's been very open to me exploring my own interests. So violence against women and girls, young people, and to be leading those work streams effectively. I, as you may have noticed, I'm not at the end of my career, and at the peak of it, I like to think. So there is going to be those needs for me to be leading, to be developing whilst in the role and beyond. So to have a good grip on that, using my experience and my lived experience as a woman in the county. As a resident, I live in a rural area, so that's so different to when I was growing up within the city. So to have those areas, and to also support the delivery of the plan. So to ensure that I have good understanding of the plan, and to ensure that the effective decision making that I'm able to do, and to also provide professional challenge. Mark and I have been extremely clear that I'm not a yes person, and he's not appointed me to agree and be yes, great idea, an echo chamber of our own brilliant ideas, but to provide that professional challenge and work together as a really strong team to improve outcomes and community experience for the people of Lincolnshire.
May I ask us?
Yes, by all means.
In regard to your previous on that work, which you mentioned would be part of your ongoing work, how do you think the new role will improve your ability to focus on those particular elements that you specialised in before?
Okay, so when you're referring to my work within Lincolnshire
Yes.
Police, okay, great. So I've written in my statement, but I'll make it clear again that I have been on the independent advisory group for 2.5 years, and I've developed those relationships within Lincolnshire Police. Firstly, within culture, so I worked with ACC Chris Davison and now ACC Nikki Mayo. And that's a kind of smaller piece of work that we've been doing, so governance, for example, rather than direct delivery of that. Violence against women and girls, I've been on the delivery board for since the beginning, so 2.5 years now. And I also chair Vulnerable Voices, which is a group of women with lived experience and who are professionals in that sector to drive policy and procedure within Lincolnshire Police, and it's been extremely effective. And was nominated for the Rising Star Award within that space. So for those who don't know, that's what the conversation that's having. And moving forward, I think to be able to use those experiences to commission services and to improve the quality. So those engagements that I have with women of lived experience, my experience speaking with them and working with them, to be able to make effective decisions as somebody within that space. It's often easy for us to think, I think I know what these people need. I think I know what that group of people need, but that isn't possible if you haven't engaged to have the depth of understanding of those needs. So I think to be able to transfer that information into the work that we're delivering in the OPCC is highly effective, and I think will enrich the impact I've been able to have and complement it very well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pepper. I've got the next question, and I think you've answered it, but so I'm going to change it.
Oh,
What do you consider your 3 priorities are in support of the Commissioner?
I think I'll amalgamate two answers here. So firstly, to provide, to have a highly effective relationship with the Commissioner. And as we alluded to earlier, we don't know what's coming. We don't know what's around the corner with our health or with our well-being, and there may need, we might be swapping seats in the future. We don't know. To have them have that really close understanding and full support, I think for me to be an incredibly supportive colleague. And to ensure that decisions that are made with my full buy-in, so that I'm able to release those into the county. It's highly effective. So that relationship, I think, to lead my projects effectively, I think within my work at Teach First, I was a regional manager, so led 5 counties, and now with Police Now, I left yesterday, so not anymore, I'm unemployed today, but from Lincolnshire up to the Scottish border and then the whole of Wales, and came under my strategic leadership. So to be able to lead my piece of work with that strategic mind and my experience working in a corporate environment, which is very different, a kind of around sales, marketing, partnerships, and to be able to use those experiences to be a highly effective person and to be humble as to what I don't know. I think it would be foolish to enter the space to think that I know everything and to be a great person. I'm very confident in the skills I have to be able to embed those into my new position. However, to learn and to listen, I think to work closely with the office, with the commissioner, with the wider force and the residents. This job isn't a right I have because of my experience. It's a responsibility and it's a privilege to be able to step back and listen and create those relationships. I think is incredibly important, and to understand I have space to learn and people to get to know. The political space isn't something I'm familiar with, so to identify those gaps in my knowledge and to be proactive and passionate in developing those relationships. And I think the third one is to ensure the people of Lincolnshire are safe, and how we hold the chief to account with that, and the people that we work with, but also their perception of safety. It's acceptable for us to say everybody is safe, but if people don't feel safe, that's not an effective way to live. I want people to feel that they have excellent services they have access to. They know who to speak to, they feel listened to. So I think that's really important as well.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Just a quick supplement. I'm interested on your point there. Clearly, your role is strategic and not operational. How would you challenge the chief constable if he decided to do an operational change that you thought was not for the benefit of the people, but was more based on budgets?
I think my experience within the independent advisory group has lent itself to me practicing the skill lots of times, so it's not new or fresh. So as you rightly say, it's not operational, but if I am able to really clearly articulate the impact of that decision within the community, so to offer that kind of critical friend and have you thought about this, to give the wraparound experience of the people of Lincolnshire who I have got to know and have developed relationships with, and to say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this from a different perspective? If we're talking about the nighttime economy, for example, have you thought about how that might impact young people or women in the city? To be able to give him all the information he needs to be able to make the operational decision. It wouldn't be for me to say it was an appropriate decision, but to give him that information so he can make an effective, well-rounded decision, I think would be something that I would be more than comfortable to do.
Very much. Next question from Councillor Bradwell, please. Thank you.
Your skills, knowledge and experience as illustrated in your personal statement are wide-ranging. You expand on some of the experience which you believe will be relevant to the role of Deputy Police Crime Commissioner, and how you are going to adapt the strategic nature of your role. Now, I know you've spoken about what you're going to do, but I wonder if you could answer that too. Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So my three main parts of my career so far, I guess, have been as a teacher. So I started when I was 19 as an apprentice teaching assistant at a special school, because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and that sounded like a good idea. So I'm a huge advocate for apprenticeships. So working in the education sector, I'm very passionate and aspirational. Everything that I do, I want to be good at everything and do everything to a very high standard. So then, so I moved to Grantham, so I lived there for a short amount of time, and became an unqualified teacher of geography. And I think something important around the education space is my experience of working in an area of deprivation and what that looks like and what that feels like within that space. I was raised on Grant Road, those of you that know it, and went to school in Lincoln, etc., etc. And my lived experience is very different to those in Grantham. It's very different to those in Skegness, and it's very, very complicated. So I have that experience within that space of working with local communities, and the impact of life experience in education. There's a very strong link between those two things. And then I worked with Teach First, which is an education charity. So, or another people-facing supported community role, where I was the regional manager. So, I've experience of working with schools at a more strategic level. So, looking at how we can support leadership teams to be successful, how we can provide them with outstanding teachers. So, a lot of children in, for example, physics don't have a physics specialist teaching them. So to be able to work across large areas to support, can this trust support this trust with a physics teacher? Can we do something online? Can we do booster sessions? Or can I mentor your head girl, for example? And so that's more kind of the strategic piece. And then I started with the IAG, and that's allowed me to have effective relationships at chief level. And coincidentally, with police now, my remit did have Lincolnshire within that as well. So I've worked with head of crime, head of L&D, head of violence against women and girls. So I have that kind of structure from superintendent upwards of work and how it's effective. So I think all of these things around partnership management, strategic decision making, being confident in my ability. I think I'm often the only woman in a space where decisions are being made, and more often than not the youngest. So I mean, I'm sure the councillors in the room here have experienced that, and will probably know how I'm feeling right now being in this space, and in a male-dominated environment of working at strategic level and within policing. But I feel this is the role that I have been preparing for, and I didn't know. This feels like the right place for me to be at this time, to use all my experiences across different sectors, and specifically in Lincolnshire. I've chosen to live in Lincolnshire my whole life. And although I've had national roles and regional roles, I've chosen to stay here and not move to London or move to the north, for example, Manchester. I've chosen to stay here, and I want to use the skills that I've learned to give back to a county and community that has given so much to me, to allow me to be in this space today.
When working for a country, just focus on these young people who need help.
Okay, thank you. Next question. There's two questions from Councillor Woodley. You may want to merge them, but I'll leave that to you.
Same questions, I think, have already been asked.
Well, maybe, but leave that to you.
One, Sarah, one, push further. Questions were, what strengths do you bring to the role, and what do you consider your areas of development are?
Thank you. I think
One.
the partnership management, I think, is incredibly important, and I think it's I read it's one of the fastest moving roles. It didn't, to my knowledge, when I was at school, I didn't think that's my eyes are on the prize, and I don't imagine this role didn't exist when I was at school. And so partnership management is a strong strength of mine. Around, to dig a bit deeper on what that means to me, it's effective communication. It's transparency of decision making, it's establishing rapport, acknowledging you have something to learn and they have something to learn from you, and ensuring that you're able to have really supporting, rich conversations and to manage that partnership effectively, and admitting when you don't know something or you have to reflect on a conversation and say maybe something didn't go right. But within this role, that the aims of whoever's in the room is to improve the life of people within Lincolnshire. So partnership management, absolutely. I think effective decision making. I think I've been on a journey from when I was a teaching assistant all the way to now to be able to make effective decisions using the information that I have, thinking responsibly and offering challenge. With working, I was on the stakeholder panel when we appointed, or when Mark appointed the newest chief. So that challenge was happening already within that space, let alone now. So I'd say they're my biggest strengths. And I kind of a softer one, I guess, is my passion for the community. And I live here, and my family live here, friends live here. I have knowledge of different communities, and that you can't train for that to feel really strongly about something. I think development-wise, as I alluded to earlier, my political knowledge. You can't play a game if no one tells you the rules. So to learn the rules of working with different layers of people in the political space or within local council, for example, and to be kind to myself about that and to ask lots of questions so that I have the information that I need to establish those effective relationships. And I think of the things that the Commissioner has alluded to, probably around criminal justice is something that I haven't had direct exposure to. I have a really positive relationship with Zara McConnell, who's the head of criminal justice for Lincolnshire Police, when she was in her role as head of EDI. We worked very closely together in that space. So I have that, and so ready to throw myself into that and to learn everything I can to be highly effective as a Commissioner's deputy.
Thank you,
Councillor Woodley. Thank you, Sarah. We'll move on to the next question then. Councillor Bailey, please.
What are your ambitions for the role of Deputy Commissioner?
My ambitions are to be highly effective. I want to be able to have an external brand that is of somebody that is confident, that's somebody that is effective, and that Lincolnshire, you know, when we reflect in 4 years' time, Lincolnshire, the services are better and the experience is better, that crime has decreased, and I've worked effectively with the Commissioner to deliver those results. I don't think that's an aspiration that's unrealistic. And I think the work that I'm able to do, my national areas of work, will be victims and workforce. So to be able to represent Lincolnshire on the national stage, and my knowledge that I have now around their national landscape and pleasing, I feel that to be able to be a voice for that and to be credible within that space is really important to me. And essentially to deliver the plan. That's the most important thing, is that I work with the Commissioner and the team to deliver a highly effective plan that we can reflect on and celebrate in 4 years' time as a real success for the county.
I think you've got the next one, councillor Bailey, as well.
I think you've sort of covered the majority of it in all your other answers, but I'll ask it anyway in case there's something you want to add. Could you expand on your experience in strategic partnership working and describe how you would envisage applying this to the role and ensuring that you remain neutral?
I can absolutely add to that, no problem at all. So because of my large geographic area, in the contracting, sales, marketing type part of my role, is looking at numbers on a bigger scale. The team that I managed and worked with police forces directly, so they would like, I don't know, 10 to 12 neighbourhood officers from police now as direct entry routes into those areas, and 10 neighbourhood officers for Cheshire, and 50 detectives for GNP, etc. Me to zone out and work with my colleague from the south, and to be able to look at what that looks like for the organisation. So what it looks like now, what it could look like, and then to lead our teams into those spaces. My relationship level is different as well. So I was working with chief officer groups. We worked directly with the Home Office, with some crime commissioners, which is how I met the Commissioner in the first instance, and those outside teams around the force, if you will. So to be able to zoom out and make effective decisions that impact a wide area or a whole programme. I was the representative nationally for the National Detective Programme, so worked across the programmes team, alumni team, finance, human resources, to be able to make effective decisions within those spaces, rather than the direct delivery of a programme or implementation within a specific force. But of course, was the point of escalation. If there were problems, so a contractual disagreement, for example, I was able to go hold the space well, and to be able to make strategic decisions that affected the force, but actually can we take learnings from that and to impact the work we do nationally with the forces in mind.
Thank you very much. Next question, councillor Beale.
Just a clarification on mine. Within your statement, you've got the sentence, in addition to being responsible for my own practice, I also work with. Depends on what you mean by your own practice.
Okay, which bits is it you're revising?
That's the third paragraph in the statement. About 2/3 of the way down that paragraph.
So teaching practice I referred to.
So that wasn't separate, that was basically your day job.
Yeah, as a teacher. So it's responsible for my own practice as a teacher, and to be also responsible for newly qualified teachers and their development experience.
Thank you.
And sorry, teaching practice is the that's used within that base of colleges and
Thank you, Karen. I think you've got the next question, councillor Beale.
Thank you. Interesting question.
Yeah, that's fine.
Your roles to date have been in supporting working with police and other parties. How do you envisage if appointed to then holding the police PCC to account?
So I'll take it.
Just to clarify though, that isn't the role of the deputy to hold me to account. I wouldn't want you to try and answer that because you won't do it.
I took that as professionally
Well,
decision.
To scrutinise decision making, not to hold to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think it's important to make that statement as well, so thank you.
Not getting with my station, it's good fun. With regards to the chief, I think my experience with the IAG has been that to be community representative when decisions are being made. So an example of this I can speak specifically about is around the nighttime economy. So I did a ride along, went out, had a very interesting experience, and I was given feedback around the technology not being adequate, it's taken too long to do things, how female officers are treated whilst out in public in the evening, and that it transpires that during the culture board meeting, the ATC wasn't aware of it, and nobody had ever mentioned that female police officers get things shouted at them, and there's a strange dynamic. Does the male officer challenge it and undermine female officer? Does the female officer feel empowered to push back? And but then their attitude is can't call out everything. If they talk about how I look, about my gender, about the way I walk or the way I talk, we would never get anywhere because when we're just trying to walk down through the streets. So I was able to have that trusted relationship with the officers to then go back to the ACC and to say, what are we going to do about this? And I think it needs to be clear that the force has zero tolerance around this space, and for officers to feel that we can have a conversation if you're going to go out with somebody to take feedback from them or to give feedback. So I'm comfortable with that conversation and to hold into account of decisions. With the delivery board, we would always go back to the actions before and to make sure lip service wasn't paid to me saying, oh, what about this idea? What about this idea? And the superintendent would always then say, oh, last time we spoke about this, and I would ask for updates to ensure that progress was being made and I wasn't just part of the space having these big ideas, but that it was delivered effectively. The Commissioner and I have had very transparent conversations about how we're going to work together. We've light touch work together since we met in November, but we haven't had to have those challenging conversations. But I have asked that in what are the Commissioner's values in decision making? Do they align with mine? Are we able to work together effectively? And the answer has been yes, hence I'm sat here today. But I'm not uncomfortable with providing additional context. If the Commissioner is making a decision around the community that I engage with, we would have to make sure he has all of the information from the community to be able to do that effectively. And we may disagree, and that's okay. But that's something that we want to ensure that we have when we work together in this professional conversation.
Thank you very much. Next question from Councillor Trotter.
You've been honest that your development is around operational policing. So I'll lead on to my question. What is your understanding of the difficulties within Lincolnshire Police, for example, with the funding, which is a key issue, and obviously resourcing, and how will you look to support the Commissioner and the Chief Constable? Thank you.
I think Lincolnshire is not alone in these two, and I've seen it nationally, but I think trust and confidence is in the place we want it to be within the county. I think some communities feel listened to but not heard. So that is within Lincolnshire is something that we need to improve. And whether that is somebody, as I suggested earlier, having somebody that's communicated with this group, I think that's really important. So trust and confidence, and also, as we said, finances. So I am confident the Commissioner can deliver effective policing with what we have and to celebrate what we do have rather than always using as a scapegoat to what we are not able to do. There are some incredibly effective areas of work, and the roads policing team, for example, that have been given funding. I think we can ask questions and say, if we had more, what could we do? And I know that the Commissioner's always championing this funding space, but I think those two areas are funding, trust and confidence, but to be able to effectively deliver what we say we're going to within the financial bounds that we have and celebrating it publicly. it's something that I am thinking of.
Can I just?
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously you seem to have a really good understanding with what communities want. Can you just touch on your understanding of what operation, you know, what is needed for operation policing? I understand you're not, you know, directly dealing with operation, but I think it's important you understand what Lincolnshire police officers, what their concerns are by lack of resources. So just want you to touch on that, or what you would hope to do given the role going forward.
Yeah, I knew both councillors said a little more to your question. I've spent time with the officers in Lincolnshire, doing ride-alongs, doing briefings. So the sergeant leaves the room and we have a chat about the problems that they're facing. I think something that I've had feedback on is around the supervision. So the promotion process and there not being enough sergeants for enough shifts. So kind of being held to account when things aren't going well, or whether that the mistrust between the supervisor and the officer themselves. There's often lack of CPD and regular training. There is a process in place that is now better, which is great news. But does every officer who doesn't want to be a sergeant have another area of work that they're able to develop in? So method of entry, as an example of that. And is the training available for those people who don't want to be a sergeant, who just want to be an expert in that space, or they don't want to be in a PSU, for example. So that, I think there is I asked this to the newly appointed chief within his interview around how the strategic conversations feel on the ground. And I think that is a challenge. Often single crewed, the shifts have got a lot smaller. So there is the feel of not being safe or supported when making decisions. So that's my experience of the feedback I've had from officers that I've spent time with. They're the overall themes.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. That's an honest answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Trotter. Moving on then, a few questions on personal independence. Councillor Pestle.
What ethical qualities do you believe are the most important for a deputy commissioner to possess?
Thank you. For me, this one is strongly integrity. I think integrity is doing the right thing when everyone is looking, and also doing the right thing when nobody is looking. So I think that for me is the most important thing. I think, as I said earlier, it's a privilege to be in a position such as this, to make sure that all of my decision making is done with the people of Lincolnshire in mind, and is in the communities that I'm going to be representing. Please, I think that one is the most important thing.
Thank you. Next question, Councillor Trotter. Thank you.
Sorry, it's me again. Sarah, please can you inform the panel of your understanding of the distinction between the role of the commissioner and the role of the chief constable?
So within my previous work, I've worked with PCCs nationally, and I've had the pleasure of working with one. But I think it is the chief's role to lead operational policing and to get the job done, to make sure that resourcing is in place, the understanding is in place, culture, well-being, delivery, and decision making. We can provide all of their feedback, but we can't get the job done for him. That's it. For the commissioner, it's around delivering the commission services to make sure that victims, students, safety, etc. But also to hold the budget and be the voice of the public into policing, not the voice of policing to the public.
Thank you very much. Next question, Councillor Bradwell, please. Thank you.
I'm dealing with the difficult around the chief constable, but I'm not going to mention that. Sarah's just asking. But it is about partnership working, and obviously we not run, but we work with partners on community safety. Then obviously we set up serious violence working group as well, because obviously that's what the government wanted us to do. So for me, partnership working is very important, and it doesn't matter which partner it is. And so I just wonder what you feel about that. I mean, we do all have to come together, don't we, and come to some resolution.
Right. So I think it's important to recognise that's something that's at the top of my list. It's at the top of somebody else's sometimes. So for us all to bring our own skills, our own lived experience, because as I alluded to before, the end result is the same. So I might have a particular opinion that you disagree with, and that's okay because we're offering that challenge to each other. And my experience may be very different to someone else's. I want to acknowledge that in a space and have develop that trust and confidence within those partnerships to be able to be honest about that. But I think that the result is the same, and whenever we're making a decision, it might take a while to get there. But is somebody's life going to be better because of the power we have in this room to make those effective decisions? If the answer is yes, then I think sometimes you have to put your personal opinion aside, and the mutual respect as well. I think I've been lucky enough to be in lots of different rooms with lots of different people, and although I might be championing something very specific, to acknowledge that that person is the expert and my understanding isn't in that space. So when the person's making a decision, for me to have the trust to be able to allow that person to hold that space, and for me to quietly disagree, give my opinion and allow that person to make that decision for them. But I think I've seen the effectiveness of outstanding partnerships and how that has affected the lives of young people, or training teachers or whoever. Things are better when we work together.
Thank you. Councillor Passel, I think you've got a question. Thank you.
In your experience working with women and girls, acquired experience and knowledge of an area where currently on a national basis there is an unfortunate disconnect in perception between the public and the police, and a level of distrust and lack of understanding. How can you apply your experience to assist the Commissioner in improving the public perception and understanding of the police, while at the same time not undermining the effectiveness of the actual day-to-day policing?
Thank you, that's a really good question. And thank you for acknowledging that there is a disconnect. I think distrust and misunderstanding of the police's perception. We all make judgments based on our experience. And I've been lucky enough to work with the Bold Voices women who have a varying degree of experience within the police. So for one person to say they've had a particular experience around a straight rape or domestic violence over a long period of time within a marriage, very different experiences and different experiences on the police. I think visible policing, which is part of the Commissioner's plan, is incredibly important in this space. Firstly, we hear you. A challenge, to be very transparent, will be accessing those spaces. If you've had a not so positive experience when you've engaged with the police around violence against women and girls, are you likely to trust somebody to share your views, to share how we can influence policy and procedure within the police? The answer often will be no. So before all of that comes these soft spaces like the Bold Voices. So in the beginning, we had around 20, 30 people come and the cameras were off because they didn't trust us. I am an independent chair for that group. It's not a police group, it's a community group led by somebody independent. And then as time goes on, the cameras went on, people smiling. And I think a lot of that is that you said we did, Pete. So every time the meeting starts, you said you want to look at the Pegasus card. And last time, since we've done that, we've done a social media campaign over last month, and this is how it works for you. And that slow trickling of information of you can trust us, and we're going to show you why. We're not talking about violence against women and girls because everyone else in the country is, and it's something we need to talk about. We do it because it's a hidden layer of society that needs help but doesn't want to approach the police, which is incredibly sad. I think there's a part of youth as well with this, to start with conversation early as how police can support, what consent looks like, what control and coercion looks like to young people in relationships, so that by the time they are engaging or feel they can, they already have that underpinning knowledge what that looks like. But we are doing this shows that people are heard and listened to and responded to, most importantly. So I think those experiences I can bring to this space, and it really aligns well with the Commissioner's coating around visible policing and what that work looks like behind the scenes. Just because there's not somebody stood outside your door, it doesn't mean we can help protect you in other ways. And also working with those really effective partners to ensure that their voices are brought into this too.
Sorry, what's the purpose time?
Oh, so if you so sometimes our survivors or thrivers, depending on where they're journey, they don't want to repeat their story to somebody new who they have to speak to. So you're able to either, if you have ADHD, autism, dyslexia, there's a piece around that, whether how you communicate over the phone. So you can say have a Pegasus card and that information is held. Or if you don't want to keep repeating your trauma, there are other ways of accessing that information to the officer that you're speaking to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, well, that completes our question survey. We must give you the opportunity. Have you got a question or questions?
Yes, I do have a question. How do you feel with your experience of deputy so far, how you can most effectively support me in my role, and in return, how I mostly can support you as a group?
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I think it's about communication, isn't it? And it's about linking in. And we do from time to time create task groups. We do from time to time have private briefings, which are very useful for the panel for experience. And it may be, it would need to speak to the Commissioner about this, but 6 months into a role, it may be useful to have a conversation with the new Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner to look at how that individual is developing in the new role. So it's about that contact and communication. And the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioners are always welcome to the main meeting. I know they get very busy and maybe representing the Commissioner. So if the Commissioner is here, the Deputy might be representing him somewhere else. But if not, always welcome to come to this meeting and where we can interact, because that's the important thing.
Yeah, thank you. And also, as I know, I felt very welcome today. And there's an experience across the country of how different deputies have been through this experience. But it's been a very positive one, and I felt extremely welcome. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And just to outline what will happen next, we will go into a private session where we will discuss this morning's meeting, and then I will write to the Commissioner by the end of play today. Is that achievable? Yeah. To give him our views on what's happening this morning. Okay.
That's great.
Nice to meet you.
Really nice.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Wayne Birch, for your opinion.
One note on an admin point of view, on the very front of the document pack, there's a note box and it says to conduct a Chief Constable confirmation hearing. Yeah, just once. That's fine.
We did think.
I just didn't want to inadvertently create Sarah as Chief Constable. That would cause me some problems with the currency.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I move that under section 100A in brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the President be excluded from the meeting. Following item on the grounds that if they were presently could be disclosed to them exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1 and 3, part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act. Do I have a seconder? March. Thank you very much. All in favour? Thank you very much. So if we now take a 10-minute break and then we'll get into our discussion. Alan just wanted to, he needs to speak to the Commissioner separately about